As we forge forward into the green economy, is mining a sunset or a sunrise sector? It's easy to consider that mining's glory days are behind us because we are racing towards a high-tech, solar, and wind-powered future where everything appears to be clean and green. Now, that's an interesting perspective, but it's one with a problem. And that is you can't build any of that infrastructure or instruments of the new economy without mining. Your phone, your computer, your EV, your coffee machine, and the thousands upon thousands of products you use throughout the year are built on the minerals and materials of the earth, which are extracted via mining. British Columbia is one of the world's most active mining centers of influence, innovation, R&D, geological know-how, and financing. At one time, mining was front and center in the BC economy. Now, today, it has faded from view. The political appetite for mining has waned, and the province has been aggressive in setting environmental targets. As well, the relationship between mining companies and First Nations, upon whose land mining takes place, means the sector has undergone tremendous changes. Now, today's mining sector has embraced those changes and says it is positioned to address the material needs of the new and the old economies. I invited Michael Goehring, the president and CEO of the Mining Association of British Columbia, to join me for a conversation that matters about the state of mining in BC.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program of the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the following and viewers like you. Please become a patron at conversationsthatmatter.tv.
Michael Goehring, welcome to Conversations That Matter. This is a conversation that I've wanted to have for a long time because, to me, I look at the world moving forward, and I can't imagine how we can maintain our quality of life if we don't have a very close relationship with the minerals and the resources that are in the earth. So we need to be able to extract those no matter what the economy looks like. So what does it look like in BC right now?
Look back the last 200 years, mining has helped build BC into the province it is today. And now, looking forward, we're helping the province, our country, and the world transition to a lower carbon economy with our minerals and metals. So that's one significant impact that the industry here in BC is having today.
Is BC a mining-friendly jurisdiction, though? Because yes, it was. You say we look back over history and we go, yes, it was. But there have been times when it was as though it was like mining was like on out of bounds. But are we now moving back towards being a mining-friendly jurisdiction?
Well, we're right now today. There's a lot of attention being paid to how we can remain, one of the world's premier mining destinations. There's lots of opportunity, but there's a few challenges that we have to overcome. There was a vision set forward for our industry several years ago through what was called the Mining Jobs Task Force. Diverse number of actors involved, industry, Indigenous communities, labor, academia, and they all came up with the idea that we needed to ensure that BC remained competitive so that we could continue to grow the industry and grow employment all across the province. And they pointed out that there's tons of opportunity for mining in BC still, but there's two key things that we need to focus on and that government has control over. One is the regulatory framework, how permitting happens for new mines and mines that continue to operate. And second, our fiscal framework, and particularly the carbon tax and how we apply the carbon tax to mines.
Well, let's take a look at that environmental framework, because I think that it is important, and anybody who looks at mining says, okay, how can we do this in a way that we're not having a net detrimental impact on mining? So as far as regulations are concerned and the way in which we conduct mining in British Columbia, how would you give us, how would you rate us or grade us on a report card about our environmental commitment?
Oh, it's very strong. Actually, in BC, we work to some of the highest environmental standards and regulatory requirements in the world. And we've built a very strong reputation globally for what we do here in BC with respect to mining and actually all natural resource sectors. Right now, what's really exciting about what's going on in our industry is there's lots of changes going on globally. Demographic change, technological change, a realization that the world has become a more competitive place. And there's only so many levers to ensure that an industry remains competitive. And one of those is to really apply all of these new technologies that are going on, whether it's artificial intelligence, drones, mega computing, et cetera, and apply those to the industry. So BC is actually, in many ways, a hotbed of innovation. And so our industry is working closely with, say, BC's clean tech sector, technology sector, and coming up with innovations and solutions so we can conserve more, waste less, and reduce our environmental footprint.
And better reclamation as well.
Definitely better reclamation. I mean, it moves from exploration through to development, construction, operations, right through to reclamation. And in BC, we really focus on what they call proactive reclamation. Mm-hmm. So reclaiming the mine as you go along through your mine life.
There's other aspects of our relationship to mining that I want to touch on, but right now, seeing as we're talking about environment, how important are the minerals that we're mining from the earth in developing that green economy? Because there are people who would go, oh, whoa, mining's a sunset industry. We're moving into high tech, and we need to move away from those traditional kinds of resource-based industries and have this economy of the future. But when I start to think about what that economy of the future is made up of, can you do it without mining?
No, you can't, in short. The minerals and metals that BC produces, copper, steelmaking coal, aluminum, silver, gold, molybdenum, they're all essential to a low-carbon future, right? For example, copper. An electric vehicle or a low-emission vehicle takes 4 times as much copper as a traditional internal combustion vehicle.
Right.
You can't make solar panels without silver, right?
Well, and you can't transmit power from solar panels without copper.
Indeed, you can't.
Yeah.
Copper is
because
still...
the loss of energy would be it would negate any benefit that you had from producing that electricity.
That's right. Yeah. So our minerals and metals are essential to a low-carbon future. And the other thing that most British Columbians don't know is there was an exercise that's gone on the last several years between the business community under the BC Business Council and the province of BC to verify the carbon level of some of our large export-oriented industries, mining being one of them.
Right.
So we know now in British Columbia, our steelmaking coal, which is critical to, say, renewable energy infrastructure, windmills, for example, has half the GHG emission intensity as steelmaking coal produced by our competitors in Australia.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
Like how do you come up with that equation? Because I'm going, how do you figure that out?
There's a whole heck of a lot of people who do run a lot of analysis and data, and it gets verified, and has been verified by independent third parties. The same with copper.
Right.
British Columbia's copper has about 40 to 50% less GHG emissions than copper from Chile.
Is that because of the way that we mine, or is it a combination of other factors?
Well, our industry has been reducing its greenhouse gases for several decades. We support a carbon price, but the real driver is our clean energy. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of an extra bonus that's been driven out of our clean hydroelectric assets that we have in British Columbia.
So that comes back to the infrastructure that's in place that allows mining to happen. We've got hydroelectric power in this province, which we know is infinitely cleaner or GHG producing positive over anything like coal or any other fossil fuel that's used to generate electricity. So you mentioned aluminum a little bit earlier, because I go, aluminum, well, we don't actually mine aluminum, but we make it here, don't we?
We do, and Canada is the world's largest producer of aluminum.
It is?
And we are indeed. And we have an aluminum smelter in
Kitimat.
It's
Yeah.
the only aluminum smelter in Canada outside of Quebec.
Right.
It's proudly operated by Rio Tinto,
Right.
and they do a fantastic job. And this past decade, they invested billions of dollars into that smelter to reduce its greenhouse gas emission output.
Well, they changed, they made massive changes in the way that that plant has operated.
They have.
Yeah.
They have. So right now, that aluminum is some of the cleanest aluminum in the world. Cleaner than aluminum that's developed in the US, in Russia, in Northern Europe. It's a fantastic product. So much so that companies like Microsoft or Apple are chatting with Rio Tinto so that they can be a provider of clean aluminum
For their products.
For their products.
Huh. So that comes back to the hydroelectric power that's required to make aluminum.
It does. It's also it's the hydroelectric, and it's also the process which Rio Tinto has invested in with the objective of having a low emission refinery.
We also talk about the environment, and we're sitting in a regulatory framework where the carbon tax plays a role. How important is that, and why is it something that needs to be examined very closely to make sure that we find the right balance so that we can continue to foster the mining sector, but also do whatever is necessary to protect the environment?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of points that have to be mentioned first, and one is that the industry itself has been reducing its emissions for some time. In fact, if you look at BC government data, our emissions have slowly gone down in the mining sector. Two, we do support a price on carbon. It is one of the most effective policy tools to reduce emissions.
So this is not something that you go, whoa, okay, you're getting a little heavy-handed here with the carbon tax. You actually support it.
We do.
Yeah.
Having said that, what we do know from the analysis and the research that we have done and many others have done is that right now, British Columbia is the only jurisdiction with a carbon tax or that's involved in a trading system that does not provide protection to what they call trade-exposed industries. And that's mines, pulp and paper, oil and gas, forestry, right? Which really is BC's primary export industries. So right now there's an uneven playing field. In Canada, okay, so there's an uneven playing field with our global competitors.
Right.
Right. But in Canada, there is as well. So right now, under the federal model, what they call the federal output-based pricing system, a mine in Ontario pays about 25% of the carbon tax that a mine in British Columbia pays. So
Okay.
we're at a competitive disadvantage with our products.
And yet you still support the tax.
We do.
Okay.
But what we're asking is we need a carbon tax that protects the environment and protects jobs. Mm-hmm. So we're really asking government to look at this, how they apply the carbon tax to these trade-exposed industries like mining, so that there's a mechanism whereby it provides some protection to trade-exposed industries. That will still mean, however, that they'll still incent emission reductions, but it will prevent what they call carbon leakage. In other words, industries that may go elsewhere to a jurisdiction that perhaps has higher greenhouse gases and sells into the global market. So at the end of the day, you have to think about GHGs globally, right?
Right.
In BC, we have low emissions. It makes sense for us to sell more of our products there. You know, if we fill market demand with low GHG metals and minerals from British Columbia, that's better for the global economy and better for global emissions.
You know, usually when an organization such as yours comes in and makes a statement like that, they're saying, and we have a real concern about the government that they're not paying attention to this or they don't care about our industry. How do you describe the relationship that you have with government right now? Do you think that it is encouraging what you're hearing and seeing as far as the regulatory framework and any changes that might be coming with regards to mining?
Well, I think this, we're in the middle of an election right now.
Yeah.
And we're not we're a nonpartisan trade association. Our concern is good policy. And right now, our members, the mining community in British Columbia, wants to see some adjustments made to how government is applying this carbon tax, so that it's fair within the Canadian Federation. Mines should not be taxed more than mines in Ontario, Quebec, or Alberta. Right, so that's one. I think it's fair to say that the NDP government that was in Victoria was trying to meet the interests of the mining sector. They understood that we're a low carbon sector and that we can make a difference globally by getting our products to market. So having that, said that, we still, there are some things we agreed with them. There's some things that we didn't agree with them. The other thing that we need to see some continuing change on is the regulatory environment that we're in right now. The environmental assessment, I think it takes some 5 to 7 years for mines to go through that environmental assessment. And just regular permitting for ongoing operating mines, it's become overly complex. And takes too much time. One of the things that government did in their 2019 budget was put $20 million into the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources to try and create a better permitting regime. We supported that. And more recently, the minister responsible for energy and mines put forward what the government is calling a regulatory excellence initiative. So they're trying to speed up permitting and also facilitate economic reconciliation with Indigenous communities through mining.
Well, that touches on my next point, because post-Silcotin, 2015, when Justice McLaughlin handed down her decision, we've seen the legal structure around the duty to consult and I'm not sure that consent is quite the right word, but in essence, you have to be working with First Nations as you develop these resources. How has the mining sector been able to accommodate that and foster strong relations with First Nations who get to benefit from the development of resources that are in their traditional territories?
Well, great question, important question. Our industry has actually been leading when it comes to advancing economic reconciliation with our Indigenous partners and Indigenous communities all across the province. For decades, BC's mining industry has been engaging with First Nations. I mean, we work on the land, so we have been in direct contact, and over time we've learned and we've listened, importantly. And so we have numerous IBAs, what they call impact benefit agreements, with First Nations communities all across the province, partnerships, and other initiatives that help advance the principles that are really contained in UNDRIP, right, and the DRIPA legislation. So this is something we welcome. We welcomed governments. We welcome the declaration. We're cautiously optimistic that it will provide greater certainty for our members, but also for Indigenous communities. Right? That's also equally important.
One of the other things, because of course we live here in British Columbia, I've spent my entire life here, I was born here, I'm a proud BC supporter, and I hope that we're continually moving forward. But I do a lot of interviews with people who are in the mining sector, and they're developing properties around the world. And I always have to ask them, well, okay, what's infrastructure like? What's the human capital, equation in you being able to do all of this work? What about roads and access to markets and whatnot? And because I use BC as my benchmark, we have all of that and more.
We do.
We're an extraordinarily rich mining resource. Oh yeah, right. I'm not supposed to be like waving your flag, but I look at what we do, and I am impressed.
We have excellent infrastructure in British
Yeah.
Columbia, just excellent. You take, for example, Northwest BC, what they call the Golden Triangle,
Yes.
right? Up where the Tahltan reside.
Mm-hmm.
There is some of the world's most fantastic copper gold deposits up there. One of the most recent mine that was built in British Columbia is the Bruce Jack mine,
Yes.
an underground mine. It's a fantastic example of what can be done in partnership with Indigenous communities, what can be done with innovation and the technical ability that we have here in British Columbia to get access to the ores. And it's I think Bruce Jack, in that mine itself, the workforce is some 30% Tahltan.
So, what is the economic value of mining to British Columbia right now? Jobs and revenue to the province.
The industry is responsible for supporting some 35,000 jobs,
Wow.
and that's every corner of the province.
Yeah.
We're the 24% of the province's exports, about $8 billion in gross domestic product in terms of the size of the industry and its economic impact. We provide generally year by year about $1 billion to the provincial government in taxation to support public services. And what's actually even more important is we know by researching the supply chain that our mines, the 14 operating mines and the 2 smelters that exist now in British Columbia, have almost a $3 billion spend throughout the province. And that spend is for materials, goods, and services. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a $3 billion injection into some 3,500 small and medium-sized BC-based businesses that reside in 215 communities in the province.
Normally I'd shake your hand, but it's COVID and say thank you. Well, virtual thank you. Thank you very much for coming in and doing
Thanks,
this.
Stu. It's been a
Yeah.
great pleasure.